The brass key turns in my hand, but the lock doesn't budge. I try again, pressing harder against the door that has welcomed me home for 32 years. Nothing. The surgical tape pulls at my abdomen as I lean forward, squinting at the keyhole that should recognize the key I've carried since 1991. Mom, I turn to see my son Derek standing in the doorway, his arms crossed and a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Not the warm smile I remember from his childhood, but something colder. Something that makes my stomach drop further than the anesthesia already has. The locks don't work anymore, he says, stepping onto the porch that I painted last spring. We had them changed while you were getting your surgery. The overnight bag slips from my shoulder, landing with a soft thud beside my feet. 3 days. I was gone for 3 days for what should have been routine gallbladder surgery, and now I'm locked out of my own home. I ask, though I already know he means his wife Jessica. The same Jessica who has been measuring curtains and rearranging furniture every time she visits, always with suggestions about how much better the house could look with different decor. Derek's smile widens. Mom, we need space. You've been great, but Jessica and I are starting our family now. We need privacy. You understand, right? He pauses, examining his fingernails. You should find somewhere else to live. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I share stories about family, resilience, and sometimes the unexpected lessons life throws our way. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. I love connecting with viewers from around the world. Now, let's get back to what happened next. Something inside me goes very still. Not angry, not hurt, just still. Like the moment before lightning strikes when all the birds stop singing. Find somewhere else to live. I repeat, my voice steady despite the surgical pain radiating through my torso. Exactly. There are lots of nice apartments for people your age. Senior living places with activities and stuff. Derek pulls out his phone, not quite meeting my eyes. Jessica found some brochures online. We can help you look. I study my son's face. The face I kissed goodnight for 18 years, the face that cried in my arms when his father left, the face I watched graduate college with honors, thanks to the second mortgage I took on this house. The face that is now telling me I don't belong in the home I've paid for, maintained, and loved for over 3 decades. I see. I reach down and pick up my overnight bag. The stitches pull, but I don't wince. Well then. Derek shifts his weight, clearly expecting more of a fight. His wife Jessica appears in the window behind him, watching through the curtains I helped her hang last Christmas. I turn away from the door, walking slowly down the front steps I've climbed thousands of times. Behind me, I hear Derek call out, his voice carrying a note of uncertainty now. Mom, where are you going? I don't turn around. To find somewhere else to live, Derek. Just like you said. My car keys feel foreign in my hand as I unlock my old Honda. The engine turns over with its familiar rumble, and I back out of the driveway where Derek taught himself to ride a bike, where we drew chalk hopscotch squares, where I waited every evening for him to come home safe. As I drive away, I catch a glimpse of Derek in my rearview mirror. He's standing on the porch looking confused, like someone who expected a different script but doesn't quite know what went wrong with his performance. But here's what Derek doesn't know, what he couldn't possibly know. I've been preparing for this possibility for 2 years. Not the exact scenario, of course. I never imagined my own son would lock me out of my house while I was recovering from surgery. But I've seen enough episodes of family greed. Enough elderly relatives displaced by grown children who suddenly develop selective amnesia about who actually owns what. I've watched too many women my age end up homeless because they trusted the wrong people with the wrong information. So I made preparations. Quiet ones. Careful ones. The first stop is the comfort in 6 miles from what used to be my home. I check in with the desk clerk, a young woman with kind eyes who asks if everything is all right when she notices the way I'm moving carefully around my surgical site. Just some family complications, I tell her, signing the register with steady hands. Nothing I can't handle. Room 237 has a view of the parking lot and a small desk by the window. I set my overnight bag on the bed and pull out my phone. 2 missed calls from Derek, both within the last hour. I delete them without listening. Instead, I scroll to a contact I haven't called in months, Patricia Williams, real estate attorney. We worked together when I bought the house in 1991, and again when I refinanced in 2008 during Derek's college years. She's probably retired by now, but her number is still in my phone. She answers on the second ring. Patricia? It's Margaret Chun. I'm sorry to call so late, but I have a situation that might require your expertise. Margaret, how lovely to hear from you. What's going on? I explain the situation in clear, factual terms. The surgery, the changed locks, Derek's assumption that he can simply evict me from my own property. Patricia listens without interruption, and when I finish, there's a long pause. Margaret, she says finally, tell me you still have that folder I prepared for you. I close my eyes and smile for the first time since arriving at Derek's locked door. I do. Good. How quickly can you get to your safe deposit box? First thing in the morning. Perfect. Call me after you've retrieved everything. We need to review the timeline, but if I remember correctly, she pauses, and I can hear papers rustling in the background. Yes, Derek is about to learn a very expensive lesson about property law. The hotel room feels like a cocoon as I settle in for the night. The surgical site aches, but it's manageable. What's less manageable is the hollow feeling where 32 years of maternal trust used to live. I don't sleep much. Instead, I lie awake thinking about the envelope. It's a thick manila envelope, sealed and notarized, sitting in my safe deposit box since Derek's wedding 3 years ago. At the time, creating it felt like an insurance policy I'd never need to use. A paranoid mother's precaution against a daughter-in-law who asked too many questions about inheritance and property values. The envelope contains several items Derek doesn't know exist. Items that will change everything about his current situation in ways he can't possibly anticipate. But that's for tomorrow. Tonight, I rest and let Derek enjoy his victory. My phone buzzes at 11:47 p.m. A text message. Mom, why aren't you answering? We can talk about this reasonably. Call me back. I turn off the phone and go to sleep. I hope you're enjoying this story so far. Family situations like this can get incredibly complex, and sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who surprise us the most. If you're finding this story engaging, please give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know you want to hear more stories like this one. Now, let's see what happens when Margaret visits her safe deposit box. Morning arrives gray and cloudy, matching my mood as I drive to First National Bank. My surgical site feels better after a full night's rest, but the emotional wound feels raw and fresh. The bank manager, Mr. Rodriguez, recognizes me immediately. I've been banking here since Derek was in elementary school. Mrs. Chun, good to see you. I heard about your surgery. How are you feeling? Better each day, thank you. I need access to my safe deposit box. Of course, right this way. The ritual is familiar. 2 keys, 2 signatures, the heavy click of the lock mechanism. Mr. Rodriguez leaves me alone in the small viewing room with box 247 sitting on the table like a metal coffin holding the remains of my relationship with my son. Inside are the usual items, birth certificates, insurance papers, my will. But beneath those standard documents lies the manila envelope that Patricia helped me prepare 3 years ago. I break the seal with trembling fingers. The first document is a property deed. Not the deed Derek thinks exists, but the real one. The one that reveals something he never bothered to investigate when he decided to play property mogul with my life. You see, when Derek got married, I wanted to help the young couple get started. So I added Derek's name to the house deed as a joint tenant. It seemed like a generous wedding gift, security for his future, assurance that the family home would stay in the family. But what Derek doesn't realize is that joint tenancy has very specific legal implications. He assumes that being on the deed gives him the right to live in the house and make decisions about it. He assumes wrong. The second document in the envelope explains why. It's a quick claim deed, dated 6 months after Derek's wedding, removing Derek's name from the property entirely. I had it prepared after I noticed Jessica measuring rooms and asking pointed questions about when I planned to downsize. After I overheard a phone conversation between Derek and Jessica about waiting for the house, like it was some inevitable inheritance rather than my current home. The quitclaim deed is signed, notarized, and recorded with the county clerk's office. Legally, Derek has no claim to the house whatsoever. He never has, not since I quietly removed his name from the deed 3 years ago. But that's not the best part. The third document is why Patricia smiled when I called last night. It's a formal lease agreement dated 1 week before my surgery. A lease agreement between Margaret Chun, property owner, and Derek Chun, tenant, outlining the terms and conditions under which Derek and Jessica have been living in my house. Derek never signed this lease, of course. He doesn't even know it exists. But under state tenant law, his residency in my house combined with certain legal presumptions creates what's called an implied lease agreement. The rent is set at fair market value for a 4-bedroom house in our neighborhood, $2,800 per month. Derek has been living in my house for 3 years without paying rent. According to my calculations and the documentation in this envelope, he owes me approximately $100,800 in back rent. But wait, it gets better. The fourth document is a 30-day eviction notice, pre-signed and dated, that Patricia helped me prepare as a just-in-case measure. All I have to do is fill in the date and serve it properly. The fifth document is the one that will make Derek's phone call later today very interesting indeed. It's a power of attorney document that I signed over to Patricia 6 months ago, giving her full legal authority to act on my behalf in all matters relating to the property. This means that while Derek thinks he's cleverly locked me out of his house, Patricia can change those locks right back anytime she wants to. In fact, she can do much more than that. I pull out my phone and call Patricia. I have everything, I tell her. How quickly can we move? I've already started. I filed the necessary papers with the court this morning based on our conversation last night. Derek should receive service of process within the next 2 hours. Service of process for what? Patricia's voice carries a note of satisfaction. Unlawful eviction of a property owner, violation of elder abuse statutes, and theft of services in the amount of $100,800. My breath catches. Elder abuse? Margaret, your son locked you out of your own home while you were recovering from surgery. He denied you access to your property, your belongings, and your medications. In the eyes of the law, that constitutes elder abuse regardless of his motivations. I sit back in the hard chair of the bank viewing room, staring at the documents spread before me like evidence in a trial that Derek doesn't even know he's about to face. What happens now? Now we wait for Derek to call you, which should happen very soon after the sheriff's deputy knocks on his door. I spend the next hour at a coffee shop near the bank, nursing a latte and wondering how it came to this. How the little boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard grew into a man who could look me in the eye and tell me to find somewhere else to live. My phone rings at 1:23 p.m. Derek's name flashes on the screen, but when I answer, it's not Derek's voice I hear. It's Jessica and she's crying. Mom Chin, please, you have to call off whatever you're doing. There are police here and papers, and they're saying we owe money we don't have. Please, we didn't mean for this to happen. I take a slow sip of my latte. Where's Derek? He's talking to a lawyer. Mom Chin, please, we can work this out. You can come home. We'll figure out a way to make this work for everyone. Put Derek on the phone. There's shuffling and muffled conversation. Then Derek's voice, tight with panic. Mom, what the hell is going on? There's a sheriff's deputy here with papers saying I owe you $100,000 and that we have to vacate the house in 30 days. This is insane. I stand up and walk outside the coffee shop, where the afternoon sun has finally broken through the clouds. Derek, I say, my voice calm and clear, you told me to find somewhere else to live. I'm simply making arrangements to ensure you have the same opportunity. But Mom, this is crazy. You can't sue your own family. I'm not suing you, Derek. I'm enforcing my property rights. There's a difference. Silence on the other end of the line. Then I don't understand. The house. You thought what? That because I added your name to the deed 3 years ago. You could lock me out whenever you felt like it? Did you actually read any of the legal documents involved in homeownership? Or did you just assume you knew how property law works? More silence. In the background, I can hear Jessica crying harder now. Derek, let me explain something to you. When you decided to change my locks and tell me to find somewhere else to live, you committed several crimes. Elder abuse, unlawful eviction, theft of services. The fact that you're my son doesn't protect you from the legal consequences of those actions. Mom, please. We can fix this. Jessica is pregnant. We just found out last week. We were scared about money and space, and please don't do this to us. The pregnancy announcement hits me like a physical blow. A grandchild. The family I thought I was investing in when I helped Derek and Jessica get started in life. But then I remember standing on my own porch, surgical tape pulling at my stitches, listening to my son tell me I needed to find somewhere else to live. Congratulations on the pregnancy, I say. I hope you'll be better parents than you've been tenants. Tenants? What are you talking about? Derek, you've been living in my house for 3 years without paying rent. Did you think that was free? Did you think that utilities and property taxes and maintenance costs were just gifts I was giving you? But you never asked us to pay rent. I never asked you to lock me out either, but here we are. I can hear Derek breathing hard into the phone. When he speaks again, his voice is smaller, younger, more like the boy who used to help me plant tomatoes in the backyard. Mom, what do you want us to do? This is the moment I've been preparing for without realizing it. The moment when the careful legal preparations meet the messy reality of family relationships. I could push forward with the full legal consequences. I could force Derek and pregnant Jessica out of the house, pursue the back rent, press charges for elder abuse. I have every legal right to do all of that and more. Or I could do something else. Here's what's going to happen, I tell Derek. You're going to meet me at Patricia Williams' law office at 4 o'clock this afternoon. You're going to bring Jessica. You're going to listen very carefully to everything Patricia tells you about property law, tenant rights, and elder abuse statutes. And then we're going to have a very different conversation about how this family is going to work going forward. Okay, yes. We'll be there. And Derek? Yes. The next time you decide to change locks on a house, make sure you actually own it first. The law office of Patricia Williams hasn't changed much in the 30 years I've known her. Same oak furniture, same wall of legal books, same sense of serious competence that made me trust her with my most important documents. Derek and Jessica arrive 10 minutes early, both looking like they haven't slept. Derek's hair is disheveled and Jessica's eyes are red from crying. They sit across from Patricia's desk, like defendants awaiting sentencing. Which, in a way, they are. Patricia spreads the documents from my manila envelope across her desk with the precision of a surgeon laying out instruments. Let me explain your current legal situation, she begins, looking directly at Derek. 3 years ago, your mother generously added your name to her property deed as a wedding gift. 6 months later, after observing certain concerning behaviors, she had your name quietly removed from that deed. You currently have no legal ownership interest in the property. Derek's face goes pale. But she never told me. Property owners are not required to notify former joint tenants when they exercise their right to change ownership status, Patricia continues smoothly. However, what you are required to do, as someone living in property you don't own, is pay rent. She slides a sheet of paper across the desk. Fair market rent for a 4-bedroom house in your neighborhood is $2,800 per month. You've resided in the property for 36 months without payment. Total amount owed, $100,800. Jessica makes a small choking sound. Derek stares at the paper like it might burst into flames. Additionally, Patricia continues, your actions yesterday constitute unlawful eviction under state law, which carries both civil and criminal penalties. Changing locks on property you don't own, denying access to the legal owner, and doing so while that owner was in a medically vulnerable state adds elder abuse charges to your legal exposure. We didn't know, Jessica whispers. We thought. You thought wrong, Patricia says, not unkindly. Assumptions about property ownership can be very expensive mistakes. I watch my son absorb this information, seeing the moment when the reality of his situation becomes clear. The house he thought he was inheriting doesn't belong to him. The woman he tried to evict holds all the legal cards. The smart-mouthed confidence he displayed on my porch yesterday has evaporated completely. However, Patricia continues, and both Derek and Jessica look up hopefully. Your mother has asked me to present you with an alternative to full legal prosecution. She pulls out a fresh document, one that wasn't in my manila envelope, because it was prepared this morning. A formal lease agreement. 12-month term, $2,000 per month rent, which is $800 below fair market value. Your mother is willing to forgive the back rent owed in exchange for your signature on this lease and your agreement to certain additional terms. Derek reaches for the lease with shaking hands. What additional terms? I speak for the first time since we sat down. You pay for your own utilities. You handle all minor maintenance and repairs. You treat me with the respect due to your mother and your landlord. And you never, ever change locks on my property again without my written permission. And if we agree to this, then you can stay in the house while you save money for your own place. You can raise your baby in the home where you grew up. And maybe eventually we can rebuild the trust you broke yesterday. Jessica starts crying again, but these are different tears. Relief, maybe, or gratitude. Derek looks back and forth between the lease and my face, clearly trying to process this unexpected turn of events. I don't understand, he says finally. Why are you doing this? After what I did. I lean forward, meeting his eyes directly. Because yesterday when you told me to find somewhere else to live, you weren't thinking like my son. You were thinking like someone who saw me as an obstacle to what you wanted. But I'm hoping that person isn't who you really are. Derek's voice cracks when he responds. Mom, I'm so sorry. Jessica and we were scared about money and the baby coming, and Jessica's parents keep asking when we're going to get our own place. And I thought maybe if you weren't living there. You thought it would be easier to push out your mother than to have an honest conversation about your financial situation. He nods, unable to speak. Derek, if you had come to me and said, Mom, Jessica's pregnant and we're worried about money and space, do you think I would have thrown you out on the street? No, he whispers. If you had said, Mom, we need to figure out a plan for the future that works for everyone, do you think I would have refused to listen? No. Instead, you decided to ambush me when I was most vulnerable. You decided that your problems were more important than my right to live in my own home. That's not the son I raised. Derek breaks down then, really breaks down, sobbing like the child he used to be when he'd made a terrible mistake and didn't know how to fix it. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. I reach across the desk and put my hand over his. You were thinking like someone who was scared and didn't know how to ask for help. But Derek, I'm your mother. Helping you is what I do. But I can't help you if you try to bulldoze over me to get what you want. Patricia clears her throat gently. The lease needs to be signed today if we're going to avoid prosecution. The sheriff's department is expecting an update on the elder abuse complaint by close of business. Derek wipes his eyes and picks up the pen. What about the locks? I'll have them change back this afternoon, I say. You'll get copies of the keys. But Derek, this is a lease. That means I'm your landlord now, not just your mother. There are rules and responsibilities that come with that relationship. He nods and signs the lease. Jessica signs as well, her hand still trembling slightly. When the paperwork is complete, Patricia slides everything into a folder and hands copies to both Derek and me. Congratulations, she says. You now have a legal landlord-tenant relationship. I suggest you both take that seriously. As we leave the law office, Derek and Jessica walk ahead of me toward the parking lot. I watch them together, young, scared, about to become parents, and I think about the envelope that changed everything. Mom, Derek turns back to face me. Can I ask you something? Yes. When did you start planning all this legal stuff? I consider my answer carefully. When I realized that love without boundaries isn't actually love. It's enabling. And I love you too much to enable you to become someone who thinks it's acceptable to treat people the way you treated me yesterday. Derek nods slowly. So, the envelope, you've been carrying it around for 3 years? In my safe deposit box, yes. Along with my will my insurance papers, and all the other documents that protect the people I care about from making devastating mistakes. Even when the person making the mistake is your own son. Especially then. We stand in the parking lot for a moment, the weight of the day's revelations settling between us like dust after an explosion. Mom, Jessica speaks up for the first time since the crying stopped. We really are grateful. For the lease, for not pressing charges, for giving us a chance to make this right. Just don't make me regret it, I tell her. And congratulations on the pregnancy. I'm looking forward to being a grandmother. Jessica smiles through fresh tears. We're going to be better. Both of us. I promise. I want to believe her. I want to believe that yesterday was an aberration, a moment of panic and poor judgment rather than a preview of who they're becoming as adults. Only time will tell. That evening, I sit in the hotel room and call Patricia to thank her for everything she did today. You handled that beautifully, she tells me. You gave them consequences and a path forward. That's good parenting, even when your child is 30 years old. Do you think I did the right thing? Part of me wonders if I should have just let them face the full legal consequences. Margaret, you taught your son a lesson today that no court judgment could teach. You showed him that actions have consequences, but that family love means being willing to rebuild after those consequences are faced. That's worth more than any amount of money. After I hang up, I pack my overnight bag and drive back to the house that has been my home for 32 years. The new locks are gone, replaced with the original hardware. My key turns smoothly in the familiar lock. Derek and Jessica are in the living room when I walk in, sitting close together on the couch, talking quietly. They look up when they hear me come in. Hi, Mom, Derek says, and his voice carries a note I haven't heard in years. Respect, maybe. Or humility. Hi, Derek. Jessica. I set my bag down by the door. How does it feel to be tenants? Derek manages a small smile. Different. But probably good different. We made dinner, Jessica offers tentatively. If you'd like to join us. I look at these two young people, my son and his wife, my tenants and my family, and I think about the envelope that sits empty now in my safe deposit box, its secrets revealed and its power spent. I'd like that, I tell them. But tomorrow we're going to sit down and create a budget. If you're going to be parents, you need to start thinking like adults about money. Yes, ma'am, Derek says, and for the first time since I came home from surgery, he sounds like the son I remember raising. We eat dinner together at the kitchen table where Derek did homework for 12 years. We talk about the baby coming, about practical things like cribs and childcare costs. We talk about the lease agreement and what it means for all of us going forward. We don't talk about yesterday. Not yet. That conversation will come later, when the immediate crisis has settled and we can look back on it as a learning experience rather than an open wound. But as I watch Derek help Jessica clear the dishes, as I see him being careful with her now that he knows about the pregnancy, I think maybe the envelope served its purpose after all. Sometimes the people we love need to face consequences before they can grow into the people we know they can be. Sometimes protecting them from those consequences is the cruelest thing we can do. And sometimes, just sometimes, the hardest lesson becomes the most important gift. I want to leave you with this thought as we wrap up Margaret's story. Family relationships are complicated, and love doesn't always look the way we expect it to. Sometimes real love means setting boundaries. Sometimes it means letting people face the consequences of their choices. And sometimes it means being prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. Margaret could have handled this situation in many different ways. She could have backed down and accepted her son's treatment. She could have pursued full legal prosecution without offering an alternative. Instead, she found a middle path that held Derek accountable while still leaving room for the relationship to heal. That manila envelope represented more than just legal documents. It represented a mother's wisdom about human nature, her understanding that people sometimes need to hit bottom before they can grow up, and her love that was strong enough to include consequences. What do you think about Margaret's approach? Was she too harsh, too lenient, or did she strike the right balance? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and often respond personally. Your perspectives help me understand how these stories resonate with different people, And that feedback is incredibly valuable to me. If you enjoyed this story, please consider sharing it with someone who might relate to it. Family dynamics can be challenging for everyone, and sometimes hearing about how others navigate difficult situations can provide insight into our own relationships. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.